In 1994, The Crow was a modern reimagining of the original graphic novel. It influenced movie making, music, and clothing for years after that. And now, 3 decades later, a remake of The Crow hits theaters. Today on the show, what will be the impact of The Crow this time around? Hello there, I'm Ali Hassan, sitting in for Elamin Abdul Mahmoud. This is Commotion, and it is time for another edition of the Group Chat, where we dig in to this week's biggest stories in the world of arts and entertainment. And today we've got a movie from 30 years ago that has risen from the dead, which makes sense since it's a movie about a guy who has risen from the dead. Also, the Democratic National Convention has risen from the dead. No, that might not be fair to say, but it's pretty lively, right? We're going to chat about it. At times, it felt more like a rock concert than a political event. Liisa Ladouceur is here. Kristy Puchko is here. And so is Jackson Weaver. Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning. Before we talk about this new version of The Crow, let us talk about the OG.
What are you supposed to be, a clown or something?
Sometimes.
It's more like surfing than skating. I wish the rain would stop just once.
It can't rain all the time.
Eric?
I was moved by that. Little moment. That's a scene from the original The Crow from 1994, based on the comic book series of the same name. It starred Brandon Lee, son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, as a musician who is murdered alongside his fiancée by a gang. He then rises from the dead to avenge their deaths. As the description suggests, very dark film, both in look and subject matter. And of course, its reputation was tied into the fact that Brandon Lee died in a gun accident on set just before the filming wrapped up. It is said by some that the film is cursed. But since its release 3 decades ago now, The Crow has definitely become a cult classic, especially among people drawn to goth culture. Liisa Ladouceur, this is where you come in, because you literally wrote the book on this culture, Encyclopedia Gothica. So talk to me about the significance of The Crow for that community.
I did. I think in my book, I said, friends don't let friends do Crow makeup outside of Halloween. That was part of my my chapter on The Crow. Well, The Crow came out in 1994, which was kind of the height of goth subculture's visibility in the mainstream, right? The Cure had hits. Interview with a Vampire starred Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. Like, I think by this point, Marilyn Manson had been on Phil Donahue. Like, there was an awareness of what this was. So I don't think that it affected what goth culture is or became, but it was a movie that I could relate to so much because it was dark and romantic. And someone said, "Hey, it's not Halloween yet, buddy. That's tomorrow." And I was like, "Yeah, that's my life."
Right. I mean, did it change the popularity of The Crow change goth culture in any way?
Well, it changed the way young goth men dressed, I think. If you didn't already own a pair of like tight leather PVC pants and a trench coat, you went out and got one after that. And the soundtrack
impractical in hot weather, but you suffer for your fashion. Yeah.
And then of course the soundtrack was quite significant.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, we cannot talk about The Crow without talking about this the music. So let's go to a little track of music here. A lot of head movement and weaving of the shoulders back and forth in the group chat right now. That's Dead Souls, covered by Nine Inch Nails for the Crow soundtrack. I love this soundtrack. I owned it. It had major songs by The Cure, as you mentioned, Stone Temple Pilots, Rage Against the Machine, and even Jane Siberry, which kind of sounds like a game of which one of these don't belong. But Jane rocked it on that CD. What did that soundtrack mean to you growing up, Kristy?
it was just hugely formative. I recently got the vinyl, and like putting that on in a dark room, you time travel. Like I time traveled back to the 90s. It was incredible. This year marked not just the 30th anniversary of the movie, but also the soundtrack. And I actually went and talked to Jeff Most, who was an executive producer on the film and the soundtrack. And like we wrote about it at Mashable. And it was such a fascinating thing because he talked about how they really changed how soundtracks worked with this movie. Because it used to be like, let's get popular songs and we'll put them in the movie, and then people will buy the soundtrack to get the popular songs. Because this was a time before you could just buy a single song or the internet or Spotify or whatever. And what was so interesting is he basically hit the pavement and like went out to these bands and was like, these are the Crow comics. We're making a movie. We want you to either create a cover that's unique to this soundtrack or write a song that will only be on this soundtrack. Like that was kind of the rules. And incredibly, they got these bands, including The Cure, which I think it might still be the only time that The Cure made a song specifically for a movie instead of just licensing one. And it's just such a cool story about how that all came together. But all of that, it wasn't just making a cool soundtrack. By making Eric Draven a musician, which he wasn't in the comics, they gave his character another way to speak to the audience, because the soundtrack essentially communicated to us the things that he wasn't capable of just saying.
Right. Eric Draven, by the way, for the young people who may not know, was played by Brandon Lee, the lead character in The Crow. Yeah. And speaking of young people, Jackson, The Crow is really a 90s artifact. I'm curious what you think about it. Somebody who grew up, a fairly long time after it came out. What are your thoughts on this?
What it meant to me was I knew there was something to do with face paint and like eyeshadow. And I watched it for the first time 2 nights ago in preparation for this show. So I'm learning so much right now. I'm just like in rapt attention from all this information. But I mean, I was aware of course, the on-set shooting death. I'm like with CBC. I do a lot of news reporting. We've been reporting on Alec Baldwin. That happening on The Crow versus Rust is something that has come up in reporting. But like in terms of like cultural impact for me, eyeshadow, Crow probably, and good music was all I knew that it existed. In terms of like how it hit me now, though, I don't think that The Crow is something that can stand on its own as like a museum piece, an artifact. The story itself is pretty thin, I would say. It sits in the genre of the rape revenge films. I just rewatched Breakout from 97, Straw Dogs not that long ago, just saw Blink twice this weekend. And those are kind of more compelling, upsetting, and deep examinations of that thread, where this one, I think the story exists more to like rest the vibe and aesthetics on top of it, which is cool. If you're in the moment, you're watching when it comes out, you're seeing how it's informing culture. But like for me, just sitting on my couch at home 30 years later, I'm sorry to say I wasn't super compelled.
I don't even think you have to apologize for that, because nothing, I was a Bruce Lee fan, and now his son is in this movie. I was a Rage Against the Machine fan, and they're doing this original. I mean, there's no way to, put that experience on you if you don't have that. So I get it totally, but you've done your due diligence. You've tried, you've watched the film, you've observed society at work. But then that brings us to this. Let's talk about this here.
When someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. And sometimes something so bad happens that the soul cannot rest.
If my ears don't deceive me, I think I heard Ozzy in the background there, which fits. That is from the trailer of the new version of The Crow, which opens in theaters today. Stars Bill Skarsgård and FKA Twigs as the ill-fated couple of Eric and Shelley. So, Liisa, what did you think when you first heard that The Crow was being remade? Do you view The Crow the way I view poutine? It is sacred and should not be messed with, or were you open to this?
I was open to it. I don't personally have sacred cows in pop culture. If I did, we wouldn't have Nine Inch Nails covering Joy Division in the original Crow. I would have thought, oh, you can't touch Joy Division, Trent Reznor, and now we have like 2 awesome versions of that song. So I'm very open to remaking stuff that I love, but I have low expectations of it. I mean, we got new Beetlejuice, we have new Addams Family, we have new Craft, like all of this 90s goth stuff, comes back around. So I went in actually with quite an open mind about it.
And what did you come out with?
It's
A close
Yeah.
it's I can understand what Jackson is saying, but the first movie was really a comic book movie, and even rewatching it now, it feels like, and if you can imagine, Jackson, this coming out before The Dark Knight, like this was not like, it was like a much darker Batman for us, which we loved. And this movie doesn't have, I mean, this movie opens with a scene during the day. And then that completely told me this is a different movie.
It's a bold choice. That's a bold choice to make you believe exactly that fact, I'm sure. Kristy, a little birdie told me that you had some issues with this reboot.
I hate this movie. I hate it so much. I have not been subtle about that. My review headline is The Crow Review, repulsive and abysmal. And like I'm with Liisa that like I'm not a person who's like, you can't remake, and because like I think that you can find new shades to stories. I think as time progresses, our concepts of these stories can change. And so I'm not going to say I was excited about this, because for one thing, the Crow reboot has been promised for so many years. We have a thing on that in Mashable too about like, at one point they're like, Mark Wahlberg is going to star, Channing Tatum, Ryan Gosling. And you're like, at that point, what is this movie anymore? If we're just plugging in random famous men, what are we doing? And when I saw the first images of this, I was not optimistic, because I was like, okay, this isn't for me. And like, that's fine. If you're making The Crow that is for a different generation, okay. But, and I'm going to be real curious to hear what Jackson thinks, but my issue with this was actually that I feel like this is a husk of the original movie, where they took the names and like the broadest strokes and then just made it like really, really, really violent. And like, I'm a horror movie kid. I don't squeamishness or easily. That's not a sentence, but you follow. But like,
we get it.
But
that's
like
that me
this,
espresso.
yeah. But this is so violent in a way that is just, to me, joyless, because there was like, you were invested in the vengeance in the first one, because he was very specifically focusing on like Tintin and Fun Boy and these characters who we've established are horrible. So like in that slasher mode, you got like, you relished like, get them. In this, there's like a huge operatic sequence where Eric Draven is just taking down 20 random dudes in suits in the most violent ways imaginable. And my thing is like, what is that? Like, does he know that he's working for a literal demon? Like it's it's just a bizarre thing to watch. Even Eric's like damage to his body. Like, look, Eric took damage in the original movie, but it was like sexy goth damage where he had like little scars and stuff. But in this, you literally see his like guts come out and then get sucked back into his body. And I was like, why? Who asked for that?
Okay, so you have no strong opinions about this film yet.
You wanted that?
I wanted
okay,
that.
Sorry.
No, I wanted the opera scene in a different movie, because it's a great sequence, but you're right.
But
it doesn't make sense.
Strange here.
Okay, last question to Jackson then. Do you see younger sort of outsider kids absorbing this film the way they did back in 1994?
No way in hell. I'm sorry. And like to qualify what I was saying before, like I also, for example, I don't love like reading Romeo and Juliet because it's been overdone in society over so many times. I wasn't there in the 1500s, but if I was, I would have been bowled over by Romeo and Juliet. Same thing for The Crow. Like I wasn't there when it came out, and I like The Crow walked so Robert Sheehan could run in both Misfits and Umbrella Academy. So I started there. Going back to the original, I'm not as necessarily impressed, but it was impactful. This version, exactly everything that's already been said. It's a husk of the original. It tried to fix some of the plot points by just overburdening it with exposition, which doesn't make sense, making it hyper-violent. And the stylism and the aesthetics and just the cool weirdness just seems all just totally gone. I didn't enjoy necessarily. I didn't love watching the original, but I respect the original. I don't respect this one.
Okay, let me do a quick little reset and reintroduce you in case people are tuning in being like, who are all these angry people? You're listening to Commotion. My name is Ali Hassan, sitting in for Elamin Abdul Mahmoud. I'm here in the group chat with Liisa Ladouceur, Jackson Weaver, and Kristy Puchko. Now we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about this.
Georgia, how do you cast your vote?
Yeah! Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris for president. Five, get loud, another round of shots. DNC, turn out for what? Turn out for what?
The very recognizable Atlanta rapper Lil Jon performing his hit single from 2013, Turned Down for What? What club is that from, you might ask? Not a club. He was running down the aisles at Chicago's United Center, where the Democratic National Convention was being held this week, to officially nominate Kamala Harris as the party's nominee for president. And if you tuned into the DNC this week, you could be forgiven for thinking you were watching some music festival live stream. Kamala Chella? I'm going to trademark that as soon as I possibly can. This week they had an in-house DJ. Patti LaBelle was there, Stevie Wonder. Lots of speculation over a Beyonce appearance that didn't happen. Liisa, what do you make of the atmosphere at the DNC? Specifically, is music like this, using this type of music in this way, is it an effective way to appeal to voters, you think?
I don't know if it changes voters. There's a lot of people wishing that Taylor Swift would get involved because they think it would make people vote. But I think maybe other than Taylor and Beyonce, I don't think that music is going to affect the vote. But it affects a lot of, well, first of all, it brings a party to the party for the people who are there. And for those of us at home, it's very emotional, you know, as you were saying earlier about allowing Eric and the Crow to express things through music. They're expressing things through music on the stage that maybe the speakers are not able or won't say.
Okay, Kristy. In addition to Lil Jon, who we heard, the DNC also had featured performances from country artists like Jason Isbell, Mickey Guyton, Maren Morris. What message do you think the Democrats are trying to convey through these particular musical selections?
I think it was a really smart strategy because one, look at the reaction. People online had a lot of thoughts about it, and but the overall thing is, it's not just that people were talking about it. It's that the way they did this, the way they picked the artists that they picked, the way they picked the songs that they picked, was saying the RNC doesn't get to decide what defines us as Americans, and it doesn't get to claim the flag. It was taking that stuff back. And I think between that and the Olympics, where we had Snoop Dogg and Flava Flav and now Lil Jon, I love the idea that rap superstars get to be the face of a kind of distinct brand of patriotism in America. And I think what it does is it communicates that as much as the RNC is trying to be we're for the every person, we're no, you can't even get a celebrity who some people are look, think of the celebrities at the RNC and go, was your reaction not oh, that guy's still alive?
The great Kid Rock, is that who you speak of?
Could be, truly. Pick one. Pick him, pick Hulk Hogan. But that's the thing. And I'm not just saying that these are old people. I'm saying that it's not that I'm not saying all liberals are famous or all famous people are liberals, whatever. But the people who are willing to come out and be I stand by this and this is my ideology, you saw that on display. You saw people being I'm gonna stick my neck out. I don't care what my fans say. I'm doing whatever. And also just the same week that Trump is using AI Taylor Swift to try to trick people into voting for him, this was such a slap in the face where they were look at all the artists that are completely comfortable being tied to this party.
Right.
It was a really interesting way to use pop culture to remind people that what the Democrats are attempting to do. Does it cover up all of the flaws within the Democratic Party? Absolutely not. But it managed to change the conversation to something that is easier to grapple with than just policy.
Right. Very, very interesting take. Jackson, I want to get your take on this too. What has been the definitive moment for you from the DNC?
Well, I'll say we just had a big article about this on DNC Test Celebrity versus Influencers. You can see it on our site, but it was basically exactly what Liisa said: is that celebrities can't really influence you when you're set in your opinions. So these moments are big, are interesting. Oprah's obviously the definitive moment. Well, maybe not obviously, but potentially the definitive moment of that convention. But what's really interesting is how the Democrats have really switched their "when they go low, we go high" mentality, and have not only gone full-throated criticisms on stage and the little Obama reference to crowd sizes sort of jokes in there, but they've also switched is going after influencers, the actual celebrities that young people care about. So over the summer you saw Trump talking to Logan Paul or Theo Vaughn or Aiden Ross, and now at the DNC you have Hassan Piker or like Noah DeBarasso or these internet celebrities also lending their voices, and there's over 200 of them that got credentialed. So just from like a reporter standpoint, that was the really interesting thing for me, where they're actually getting the covert celebrities to push that message.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. I think all of you are suggesting does this get quote unquote bums in seats or, people in line, and some of them in their gerrymandered districts? Do they go and get in line, long lineups to vote because they heard from people who they like, respect, adore? So it remains to be seen, but a very interesting conversation. As you say, Kristy, it's changed the conversation a little bit to something much more palatable. We've got about 2.5 minutes left. This is Commotion. I'm Ali Hassan, and before we go, I do want to ask you, the weekend's about to happen. It's about to start in moments. I want to know something I can spend time with this weekend. I'm going to ask you each for a recommendation. Liisa, let's start with you.
Well, I'm going to go completely off character and recommend the new album by Sabrina Carpenter, who wrote the, quote, song of the summer, Espresso. It's called Short and Sweet. The songs are short. They're not necessarily sweet. It's very biting. It feels like it's been taken out of the single dating girls group chat and put on a record, and there's a lot of bops, and she makes fun of guys who quote Leonard Cohen and are bad human beings. So I love it.
You started this chat talking about Nine Inch Nails. You're ending with Sabrina Carpenter. Your open-mindedness is very much on display. Good for you. Good, wonderful stuff. Kristy, what's your pick for the weekend?
I want to say now in theaters is Blink Twice, which got referenced a little bit earlier. It's a new thriller starring Channing Tatum and Naomi Ackie, and it's directed by Zoe Kravitz and also co-written by her. And it's a very fun thriller. I've seen it twice, and I can say the rewatch is very satisfying. But like, it's a very cool thriller, and I'm gonna throw it out there. It is a good date movie because I feel like if you're dating a red flag person, you're gonna find out by the end of this movie.
Okay, great. That's one way to do it. Don't ask them questions. Just look at their face beside you in a theater.
What did you think about this movie?
Exactly, with a notepad out. All right, Jackson Weaver, 1 minute left to you. What's your thoughts for a recommendation?
I'm going to go, there's this comic artist, Canadian, Adam D'Souza. He has a graphic novel out this year called The Gulf, which is really good. But instead of recommending that, he has this other comic called Blind Alley. It's this like slice of life, some endless summer sort of comic that's almost like Family Circus about these kids in this little nowhere town. But it has this very unsettling heart to it. It's almost like a Family Circus met like Lovecraftian horror. There's something wrong in this town. Something's going on the outskirts of it, and it's all for free online. I am obsessed with it, and I actually absolutely recommend it to anybody that likes some comics.
All right, so we got comics, we got a movie, we got music. Everybody's all set for the weekend. Thank you all three of you for being part of the group chat again.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Jackson Weaver is a senior writer for CBC Entertainment News. Also, he's in Toronto. Liisa Ladouceur is an author and journalist based in Toronto. And Kristy Puchko is the film editor at Mashable in New York City. And that is it for the podcast today. And hey, while you're listening, don't forget to give Commotion a follow. You can also check us out on YouTube and Instagram. We're at Commotion CBC. I'm Ali Hassan. I'll see you again really soon. Have a great weekend.